How's it going, everyone? My name is Kelvar, and today we're going to be doing a patch 7.10, not 7.1, but 7.10 patch notes review, and what it might mean for solo queue. So this is going to be primarily audio, unless you want to read these patch notes with me. So you guys should be able to just put this video to the side while you're doing something else, maybe in a solo queue game. And just listen to it, unless you want to go through these with me, because there are quite a few changes to a lot of champions and a lot of things going on in this patch notes. So, without further ado, let's get right on to it. So, Heimerdinger got kind of changed a lot. Heimerdinger naturally, or not naturally, but in the past has been very much focused on his turrets and his lane dominance because of how many turrets and how much damage they do with his extra beam after they charge up. And they kind of really changed it. So pretty much they changed his base health regen to 7 from 11, which is pretty big, and his health regen growth from 1.75 to 0.55. That's pretty damn big, but it's Heimerdinger, so it's really not a huge deal because it is Heimerdinger. And Heimerdinger isn't necessarily in the fights, he's more of a mage, a control mage, what have you. So that being said, they totally redid his passive. Heimerdinger now gains 20% movement speed when he's within 300 range of an allied turret and the turret he creates. So he just has 20% movement speed when he's near a turret or he's near one of his turrets, which is pretty nice. They kind of opened up a lot of Heimerdinger to more outplay potential rather than just place turrets and hope for the best. So I think that's kind of cool and strange at the same time because Heimerdinger's never really had that. His turret, pretty much the biggest change is in the past, you've had a stack, you've built it up over the ranks. You can have 3 stacks of turrets at all ranks. So you don't have to build those up anymore. You always have 3 stacks. They generate every 20 seconds, so that's a buff from, what it was, because it went 24 to 20 based on rank. Their base damage got slightly nerfed with this, but their ability power ratio went up by double what it was, so that's pretty nice. The beam damage got nerfed a little bit, and the ratio didn't get changed. So overall, they do a little bit more damage, at least from the auto attacks. But they no longer prioritize enemy champions or champions that attack turrets. And they also no longer remain active after Heimerdinger leaves an area. They immediately shut down. But nearby turrets gain 20% charge for every rocket that hits a champion and 100% charge if an ease grenade hits a champion. And the turrets now charge from 0 to 100% over 90 seconds. Up from 16 seconds. So you know how Heimerdinger's turrets would always auto attack, and then they would have like an annoying ass beam that went through everything? That doesn't happen really that much anymore on its own. It happens every 90 seconds on its own. Unless Heimerdinger hits his rockets or he hits his stun grenade, then they get the beam. So Heimerdinger can really outplay other laners now because if he hits all of his rockets, if he hits his stun grenade, boom, immediately charged on all of his turrets. So that's pretty cool, but very different from what Heimerdinger has been in the past, which is a very passive laner who just kind of dominates because he has all of the safety with his turrets. Moving on to his W. His W mana cost went down at all ranks, and his cooldown is getting reduced at all ranks. And this is now every time a rocket hits a champion, it grants 20% of the beam charge for his turrets within 1,000 range of the damage. So pretty much, if all 5 rockets hits, it's 100% charge. Like this Storm Grenade. So same thing with the grenade. If it hits a champion, regardless if it's in 1,000 yards, it'll 100% charge the beam of the turret. And apparently he can also lob a grenade onto himself. I don't know if this means he can lob a grenade onto himself and it automatically charges all the turrets. I don't know. That's what it makes it sound like because it's right after this charging of the beam here. But we'll have to see. And then the upgrade got increased base damage and increased ability power. So he's just getting a buff pretty much all around. I like this. I think this is really cool. It's definitely a big change from what Heimerdinger used to be in the passive but lane dominant mage that he was. Now it opens him up for really cool kind of plays and more mechanical outplay potential, which is really cool. So maybe we'll see more Heimerdinger in solo queue. So good luck for all of you who like laning, because God forbid. Next on to Rammus, his passive. He no longer gains 25% of his armor as attack damage. Instead, he gains, his basic attacks deal 8 to 20 damage at levels 1 through 13, plus 10% armor as bonus magic damage. So pretty much, it's a buff early game, and I believe it's a nerf late game. So not a huge deal, really. It's pretty much the same thing, honestly, except it's magic damage instead of attack damage. So I don't think that'll have too much of an effect. His power ball is really a big change. Its duration, it goes down from 7 to 6 seconds. Its cooldown has been reduced from 16 to 10 to 16 to 6 seconds at max rank. It channels that now, so it can be interrupted. That's the big difference here from what it was. It couldn't be interrupted in the past. Now it's interruptible. Its max movement speed goes not 155% anymore. It's now 150 through 235% movement speed, levels 1 through 18. That is insane amounts of movement speed. Damage, it does 100 to 300 damage in the past. Now it does 100 to 240, so it does a little bit less damage. Really not that big of a deal. It's slow. Goes from 20 to 40% to 40 to 80% for 1 second. So it decreased the amount of time they're slowed, but it increased the rate that they're slowed. Really, it's pretty much the exact same thing, because it's literally double the slow amount for half the time. So it's pretty much the exact same thing. It just feels, it's going to feel a little bit different, but it's going to be the exact same. His collision detection, his radius is slightly reduced, which means he's easier to navigate through enemies like minion waves. Area of effect unchanged. In other words, Rammus will knock back damage and slow enemies in a larger area than the collision radius. Rammus can now interact with plants during Powerball. Interesting. So he'll be able to go over one of those bomb plants and still be in his Powerball. That's really cool. His W, defensive ball curl, now 6 second cooldown from 14. It lasts 6 seconds. It increases resistances by 20 flat, plus an extra 50 to 70% of Rammus' total resistance, so that's kind of cool. Rammus slows himself by 60% while this, so this is new. So Rammus now slows himself when he's using this ability. Rammus can now reactivate it to end his effect early, so now he can deactivate it if he needs to. And while it's active, Spike Shell is amplified by 50%, which means this gets 50% increased damage, which means this could be 12 to 30 damage. So it's a slight buff to his auto attack, so that's cool. Thornmail-esque. Enemies that basic attack Rammus while defensive ball curl is active take damage equal to 12 to 30 plus 15% of Rammus' armor while defensive ball curl is active. So it's pretty much like a mini Thornmail. It's really pretty much very similar to what it has now, only it's different scaling, which isn't bad. That plus plus his Powerball is really cool. We'll have to see how that works. And then his Fringing Taunt. Fringing Taunt no longer reduces the target's armor. Instead, Rammus gains 20 to 40 attack speed, 20 to 40% attack speed for the duration of the taunt, which is 1.25 to 2.25 seconds, and the attack speed buff duration constantly refreshes while Rammus' other abilities are active. So that's cool. Instead of reducing target's armor, it increases Rammus' attack speed. Really, that's not that good because Rammus isn't necessarily an auto-attack champion, but it looks like they're trying to change, at least help his clearing and his auto attacks by, with Spike Shell passive and such. And then his Tremors, his ultimate, damage per second is going to be 40 to 120 plus 0.2 ability power, which is down from what it used to be. But now they deal double damage to structures. And Tremor slow affects enemies by 8 to 12% for 1.5 seconds. Subsequent Tremors add an additional stack and refresh the duration. So pretty much, Tremors, his ultimate now stacks as a slow. It goes 8% per tick, or 12%, 10% or 12% per tick based on what rank the ultimate is, and it maxes the slow at 64 to 96%. So at max rank, if someone gets hit by all ticks of this, you're not going to be doing a lot of damage, but they're going to be pretty much not moving at all because they're 96% slow. So that's cool. So Rammus is going to have a lot more utility than he already had, which is kind of cool. And he's going to be pretty good at pushing down towers because of his ultimate as well, because they deal double damage to structures. Moving on, Cassiopeia. they just changed it so her tail acts realistically when it moves. So nothing to change there. Fizz. Seastone Trident. The bleed damage was brought down from 25 to 85%, or not 25 to 85 rather, to 20 to 60. So that's a small bit of a nerf, but it increased the ability power ratio from 0.33 to 0.4. So that's pretty decent. I don't think that's going to make too big of a difference on Fizz. And his active damage on his W is down from 25 to 85 to 20 to 60. Again, same thing, plus the 0.4% ability power, up from the 0.33 ability power. Active damage versus marked enemies. So this is if the enemy is marked, which is a double damage, pretty much. 75 to 225 plus 1 ability power to 60 to 180 to 1.2 ability power. So yeah, this is really just different scale. This is just meant to kind of nerf Tank Fizz a little bit because of the ability power scaling ratio. They want Fizz to be an assassin, not so much a tanky carry, because with, you know, the Sunfire, Cape Triforce, Fizz, his base damage is going to do less, seeming as how he has less base damage here, but at higher scaling. So his top lane Fizz is going to do a lot worse, whereas Assassin mid Fizz will do a lot more. So this is meant to change Fizz from the top lane kind of pseudo tank to the mid lane assassin that they want him to be. Graves, end of the line. Q's base damage was nerfed from 55 to 115 to 40 to 100, which Q1 ratio was increased to 0.8 bonus attack damage. And then the 2, which is the pop, when it like hits a wall and then it explodes, was 180 to 260, and now it's 80 to 200. And its ratio went from 0.4 to 1.2 to 0.4 to 1.6. So this looks like it's targeted kind of at his early game here because of the scaling. Since it scales better, they kind of want to rein him back a little bit, since it just does less damage at the early ranks. And actually all throughout it does less damage, really. But since it has better scaling, it's going to be ultimately better, honestly, when he gets to Graves' late game. So they kind of wanted to hurt his clear a little bit, in my opinion, and slow him down in the jungle so he just can't like out clear and jungle any jungler. So that's kind of cool. They made him more into a late game carry than actually an early game monster like he's been in the past. And then collateral damage. His ultimate's cooldown was nerfed. It went 120 at rank 1, 100 in rank 2, and 80 at rank 3. So rank 3, no change. Rank 1, really big change, 20 seconds. So they just kind of nerfed his early game, really, and brought up his late game. Jax. Jax's basic attack, empowered attack, and crit animations have been improved. Okay, yada, yada, yada. Ivern, base stats. They nerfed his movement speed a flat 5. And his Friend of the Forest. Wow. So every time you take a jungle camp, it costs you 33% of your health and mana now. That's pretty bad. Wow, that's really weird. Okay, so they nerfed Ivern pretty hard. I don't know. I'm not an Ivern player, so I don't know how big this will affect him. But I think that's going to really impact his early ganking. Yeah, that's going to really affect his early ganking. 33% of his base health and base mana. Oh, man. Well, we'll have to see how that works out, but I think that's really going to hurt Ivern's early pathing, because that just kind of cuts down his options by a lot. But we'll see. I don't play Ivern. Lee Sin. They nerfed his movement speed by a flat 5, so they're nerfing his base movement speed, which is kind of big. Same thing with Ivern, but really not that big. And they nerfed his Dragon Rage cooldown at early level, so they're really nerfing Lee Sin's early game ganking pressure, I guess. Not necessarily ganking pressure, but just early game as best they can without taking away what makes Lee Sin Lee Sin. So they just nerfed the cooldown by 20 seconds at rank 1. Really not a huge deal, but it's a nerf still. Lulu nerfed base health by 20... What is that? By 28. Yeah, nerfed base health by 28 roughly. And then her E, the base shield strength, got nerfed by just flat out nerfed at every rank. So she's going to have a little bit less shielding overall in the entire game. But Lulu has a lot of shields with her ultimate and her help pick, so that's not a huge deal. But 30 off of the base shield is pretty big. But she still has the scaling, so we'll have to see how that's going to work out. So a little bit of a nerf. Kassadin. Force Pulse now determines what it hits at the end of its cast time rather than at the start. And it has a 600 range, up from a 585. So it just kind of changed the hitbox and increased the range a slight bit, which is pretty nice. It's more of a quality of life for Kassadin than anything. And it's kind of, I don't know how this end of its cast time rather than the start, I don't know how that'll affect it because that's such a short amount of time, but yeah, I'll have to play Kassadin. I haven't played Kassadin in a long time. I wonder how that feels on him now. Maokai. Now, Maokai is one of the tanks that got changed with Sejuani and Zac, so this might be a big one. So let's see what they learned after the last patch. Sap Magic. No longer procs against structures, and its cast time is 0.25 seconds, and it still scales down with Maokai's attack speed. So a little bit of a buff. Bramble Smash. It costs 50 mana at all ranks, so nerf early, buff late game. Not even late, just mid to late. Cooldown, 8 to 6 seconds to 8 to 5 seconds, so that's a bit of a buff. And it slightly increased distance, knockback distance. Okay, so it increased the knockback distance. So if you don't know how the knockback distance works on Maokai now, the Q knocks champions back farther the closer they are to Maokai. So if they're pretty much right on top of Maokai, they knock him back 275 units right now. Whereas now, after this patch 7.10, will now be knocked back 300 units. So a slight buff. So Q just got completely buffed, pretty much overall, except for the mana at rank 1. E, the sapling toss. The sapling toss that we've all seen the fun videos of, multiple saplings in a bush just kind of insta-giving an 80 carry. They changed the mana cost to 60 to 80 mana at max rank, where it was only 60 mana at every rank. They decreased the base damage by a lot, actually, by 20 at every rank, it looks like. And enemy health ratio. But they buffed, wow. So they buffed the damage that it does based on the enemy's health to 8% at all ranks. Plus 2% per 100 ability power targets max health. So they nerfed this initial damage, but they buffed the max health. So this is going to do more damage later game, so it's going to help him not fall off. At least a little bit better. Nature's Graph fixed a bug that caused it to fire without going on cooldown if Maokai died while casting it, so that's nice. So overall, Q got a buff, E got a slight nerf, at least especially for laning phase for support Maokai. That's not bad, honestly. He made out of it pretty okay. I still hate his ultimate. I hate Maokai's ultimate so much. Rakan, Gleaming Quill. It has a range of 900 now instead of 800, so a slight bit longer range. His W, his Grand Entrance, his Knock Up, has more damage now, from 70 to 230, from 270 to 250, so a slight bit of a buff at every rank except rank 1. And then E, his Battle Dance, the thing that gives his shield, it just got a slight nerf. Where it did give 50 to 190 shield, it now gives 50 to 150 shielding. So a nerf in the later game. So I guess they're giving him more damage but less shielding, which kind of confuses me because I don't know what they're going for with Rakan. If they want like an engage tanky champion, or if they want like a poking or a shielding or a utility or what. He has healing, he has shielding, he has engage. I really don't know what they want with Rakan, so I don't know what to make of this really. Since they nerfed his shielding but they buffed his damage, I really have no clue. But whatever. Renekton fixed a bug where Predator's lockout time was shorter than it was intended. Fixed a bug, fixed a bug. Fixed a bug, fixed a bug, fixed a bug. Okay, Fury empowered cast no longer generate Fury. Fixed a bug where Relentless Predator and queuing either color the meek or dice while at 100 Fury that queue the ability would sometimes not be empowered or consume Fury. Slice and Dice fixed a bug where Slice and Dice ranges were shorter than intended. Fixed a bug where Slice and Dice dash speeds were slower than intended. Okay, so Renekton was apparently just full of bugs, but they're fixed. Riven, timing of Q animation canceling is more consistent. If you don't know what animation canceling is, you should just skip this section. Okay. Riven's runic blade stacks are now tracked below her health bar and are only visible to Riven. Okay, so Riven can only see the runic blade stacks. All right. That's strange. Okay. Broken wings. The timing around when Riven becomes able to animation cancel Qcast, as well as how long she has to animation cancel, have both been made more consistent. Riven can no longer joke, taunt, laugh. Okay. Broken wings seem more reliably target units on higher latency. You fixed the bug with a knockback in third cast, and it's sooner than intended. Fixed the bug. Okay, so they just bug fixed her, really, and they changed the animation canceling. So I don't know. That's pretty much just going to affect Riven mains. And, well, I mean, I don't know how they fixed it, because they might have made it worse. They might have made it better. I don't know. Probably made it worse, but we'll see. Sejuani. Now, Sejuani was another one of the tanks that was touched in patch 7.9. So let's see. I think she probably got nerfed completely because she's been a monster in solo queue. So her passive goes from armor flat resistances, 100 at all levels, from 20 to 100 at all levels. So they completely gutted the passive early game. They just literally dropped 80 resistance off at rank 1, or at level 1. That's kind of nuts. Q, her hitbox shifted slightly to address instances where Sejuani collided with targets behind her. Okay, so they changed that. And her W. These changes mostly cancel each other out, since Rinser's Wrath takes a second to complete. Slight cooldown increase overall. Cooldown starts on once both swings are complete. Okay, so slight cooldown increase. Okay, so that's a slight nerf to her W. So they kind of gutted her early game. Shielding passive. So they did nerf her, but they didn't nerf her as much as I thought they would. So that will definitely hurt her early game, but not by too much, I don't think. Yeah, definitely not. Udyr, they lowered his mana costs from 50 to 33 to 45 to 28. So that's a little bit of a buff for Udyr. I know Udyr can be a little bit of a mana annoyance. Yorick. Passive. Mistwalkers no longer perish when they move too far away from Yorick or the Maiden. Okay, so that's good. If Last Rites kills a unit when Yorick has max graves, the farthest grave will now be the furthest grave will now be replaced rather than no grave being spawned. Okay, so that's different. So now you can replace the grave sites. The Maiden stats now increase when Yorick puts another skill point in Eulogy rather than remaining unchanged until Yorick summons her again. Okay, so that's a little bit of a quality of life. So if you get level 11 while you have the Maiden out, the Maiden stats will increase when you level that up. And now my favorite part, or not my favorite part, the thing I've been looking for most to this patch notes is Zac. Zac is my main. I'm a Zac main. If you didn't know, hello. And he's in a pretty nasty spot right now, in my opinion. But we'll have to see what Riot did to him. So his Q damage was 50 to 130 with 0.3 ability power scaling. So that's really not that much damage. They nerfed the damage to 40 to 120, plus the same scaling, 0.3, plus 2.5% of Zac's math health. So this is nice. I really like this, because this increases Zac's damage in the late game by a decent amount, so he'll actually be able to still do some kind of damage at least. So if you have 1,000 health, I think that's 25 extra damage on top of that. So you'll do 40. So if you're level 1, let's just, God forbid, say you're level 1 with 40 or with 1,000 health, just God forbid. So that's 25 plus 40, so it'll be 65 plus 0.3 ability power. So that's not bad. Whereas if you're late game and you have 4,000 health, that's going to be an extra 100 damage on Stretching Strike. So that'll be nice. Its second hit bonus attack range is now 125, so that's quality of life. That's really nice. Second blob generation generates a blob if Zac hits a second enemy of any kind. So good. So this means Zac's sustain's going to be better, because where it used to only generate a blob if it hit another champion, now it's going to generate a blob regardless of if it, whatever it hits, as long as it hits something. The slam damage radius is up to 300 units from 200, so that's nice. So the AoE you get from knocking the two units together is up 100 units. If Stretching Strike's second hit would kill a minion or monster, the target will now wait to die until after Zac has slammed it into Stretching Strike's first target. thank goodness. That was so annoying when it didn't do that. Precise strikes. If stretching strike's first target is standing on top of another enemy, the second hit will now reliably choose a different target than the first. Zack can now cast Unstable Matter and queue up Elastic Slingshot during stretching strike's second attack and while slamming 2 targets together. Really nice. So they made a lot of quality of life changes to his Q. And buffed its damage, its range, and pretty much everything about it, which is awesome. Because I think if they buff the Q, that makes up for his ultimate. But we'll see in solo Q. Elastic Slingshot, its knockup duration was 0.5%. Previously, Zack's knockup duration was 1 second, but it got nerfed in patch 7.9 to 2.5 seconds. It looks like they're changing it based on level to be 0.5 to 1 second based on how long... No, it's not based on level, it's based on how long you charge it, so that's good. So if you have a max charge Elastic Slingshot, it will go back to the one cooled for the 1 second knockup, which is really nice. I can understand taking it away from the 1 second at all times, because that was a lot, but if you fully charge it, it will be a 1 second knockup, which is awesome. I'm A-okay with that. And then his ultimate, time to fully charge, is increased from 1 second to 1.1 seconds. And that's simply because it will allow enemies to actually respond after they get hit by a slingshot. So that's kind of sucks because I really don't like his new ultimate. I think it's kind of awkward. I think it has really cool potential, but I think its potential is very difficult to pull off, or has been very difficult to pull off with this Elastic Slingshot. But since they just upped its knockup with his E, it should be easier. But now they left that 0.1 second for enemies to respond before they get pulled in. And that's why they did that. They couldn't leave this at 1 second, because if they did, there'd be no way for an enemy to respond without being let's bounced upon, unless they QSS or something like that. So that's what they did there. So pretty much buffs for Zack all around, which I'm A-okay with. And now he actually does some damage with his Q. So cool beans, good on Riot. I'm very happy about that. Ancient Coin line. Build path, Ancient Coin, Ancient Coin Rejuve Bead, 350 gold, total change on cost, nothing. So you have to have a Rejuve Bead instead of a Fairy Charm. Health regen is 50% belt, so that's decent. So that's a little bit of a buff, just because of the health regen you get from it. Talisman of Ascension, 175, a little bit of a buff. Same thing, a little bit of a buff. Just extra health gen, literally 25% base health regen at all purchases. Face of the Mountain, Spoils of War. Face of the Mountain grants melee champions 150 bonus attack range and slightly increased attack speed against minions that can... Cool. That's nice. The bonus attack range is nice, but it's even nicer the bonus attack speed, because I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally missed a minion because of this. But that's really cool. Alright, the Equinox now grants melee champions, same thing, so it's the exact same thing. Spell Thieves. Minion penalty. Killing a minion pauses tribute stack generations for 6 seconds per minion slain. Wow. So you can't actually farm as a... Disables tribute procs. Pauses tribute stack generation. That's actually pretty bad. Oh, it's not bad. It's really not that big of a deal, because you shouldn't be farming that much anyways. But still, you don't stack any more gold generation from poking enemy champions when you farm a minion. So that's unfortunate, but really not a huge deal. It's not going to make or break it. Spirit Visage got buffed in the health department by 25, nerfed in the magic resist department, and nerfed in the base health regen department. No, that sucks. Oh wait, no, that's not that bad, because it's base health regen. Okay. Spirit Visage is still occupying the slot of magic resist item you'd want most of the time. Alright, so they just changed it a little bit so you could get different items, but I still don't think it's going to make a big difference, because it still has the regen stat, or the lifesteal stat on it, or the percent lifesteal regen stat on it. So this isn't too big a deal. It's just 5 magic resistance, some health added to it. I'm still going to get it on Zack anyways. Righteous Glory, number of takedowns enabled. Okay, so it's just tracking. No big deal. Rift Herald. Rift Herald Deathcry is now global when killed as neutral objective. Added a chat notification for the enemy team indicating which player picked up the Eye of the Herald. Rift Herald pings the enemy team whenever she prepares to leap at a turret. Okay. So that's more just awareness. Howling Abyss, I don't care about. Here's the tree line, don't care about. Crowd control. Polymer, okay, it doesn't matter. You can surrender 15 minutes with a unanimous team vote now. So surrender votes between 15 and 1959 need to be unanimous. Surrendering 5 minutes earlier with a unanimous team vote works as a full-on surrender. So they added the 15-minute surrender vote here. So that's nice. Rotating game mode, Ascension, and I think that's it. Bug fixes. Cool. The following chromas will be released with patch 7.10. Brolaf. I should get Brolaf. I play a lot of Olaf, so that's nice. But cool. So, overall, let's go back over the champions. Just do a quick little bit. Heimerdinger. I don't know if it's I would call it a buff. I would call Heimerdinger a buff completely. Rammus. I'll do this. Heimer. An up arrow means a buff. Rammus. I'm going to call that a buff because of his power ball. We're going to go Cassiopeia. Doesn't touch Fizz. Fizz is... Oh, jeez. What did I do? Whatever. Fizz didn't get a buff per se. Assassin Fizz got a buff. So Assassin Fizz gets a buff. This is a buff for Fizz in the mid lane. Nerf for Fizz in the top lane. Tank, pseudo tank Fizz. So Sunfire Fizz, not the best. Assassin Fizz, going back to what it wants to be. Graves, nerf in the early game, buff in the late game. Jax, a little bit of a ding. Ivern, nerf, just complete nerf. Not too big of a deal. His early clear is going to be really impacted. 33% of his base health cost is a lot. And 33% mana. So he's going to be really affected in the early game, and he's going to feel that, definitely. Lee Sin, nerfed. Move speed, cooldown on his ultimate. Lulu, nerfed. Kassadin, I would call it a little bit of a buff, but I don't know how that's going to feel with the Force Pulse at the end of the cast time. So we'll have to see. Maokai got a... I would call Maokai a buff because of the Q, and the stopping toss didn't get nerfed too bad with the damage because it still has the 8%. So early games, E's going to do less damage, but it's still going to do the same amount of damage or scaling. So it's not that big of a deal. So Maokai would call it a buff. Rakan, less shielding but more damage. So I'm going to call this a nerf. Well, actually, he does have a bigger range on the Q. Yeah, I'll call this one neutral because Rakan, I really don't know what Rakan's meant to do. Is he an engage? Is he a heal? Is he utility? He's kind of like a mix of everything, which is kind of weird. So they buffed his damage and they nerfed his utility with his shielding. So, I'm going to say it's a little bit of a nerf because I don't think Rakan's meant to do damage so much as he is utility. But anyways, Renekton, bug cleanup, Riven, animation canceling, Sejuani, just a flat nerf. Udyr, small buff with the mana. Yorick, quality of life buff. With his grave spawns and his ultimate maiden. Zac just pretty much buffs all around except for his ultimate. And that's pretty much it. So lots of changes in this patch. I know this was a longer video. And I know I didn't go too much into detail about it, but I might go into more detail about Zac because that's really nice for me. But anyways, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Go read the patch notes yourself if you don't know. If you want to look into more detail here, please read the patch notes before you do solo queue. That's my PSA for the day. I can't tell you how many people don't read the patch notes that are in my solo queue games, and it's very saddening. So thank you all again very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I wish you all the very best of luck in solo queue.